Welcome to Community Conversations for Technomatic's Plant Simulation. We're here for another edition of our virtual user group. I'm Taryn Blake, Community Engagement Program Manager for Siemens Digital Industry Software, and I'll be your host for this enablement session. Our topic for today, as you can see on our slide here, is connecting plant simulation models using ODBC interface. So that is what we'll be going through. So as most of you all know, our presenter for this session is Mr. Steffen Bangsow. He is a freelance simulation expert and has been for quite some time now, and has completed hundreds of projects and training sessions. He's also published 5 books on plant simulation, and is one of the leading contributors to our community.
Hello. Today I want to show you how to connect plant simulation with Access using the ODBC data interface. I prepared a database, Access database, and you can download the Access database using the link in the chat. I prepared 2 tables. First table is elements, and there's element name for the stations, processing time, availability, MTDR in seconds, and capacities. And there are two machines and 1 buffer. And the second table is simulation runs. And simulation runs contains a buffer capacity, throughput, exit interval, and output at the end of a simulation. There's already one here in this table. I delayed this. But before you can start to connect plant simulation with Access database, you need some steps to prepare this. And the first step, maybe it's the most difficult one. In my standard app installation of Windows 11, there's no ODBC driver for a 64-bit version of Access. And so the first step is to install. Here in my case, I use Office 365, and I need to install first the Access database engine to have the database on my computer and not only the database in the cloud. By default, you have only installed a 32-bit database driver in your Windows 11. And this is not possible. It's not possible to connect a 32-bit database system with plant simulation. Plant simulation requires a 64-bit database system. And if you want to use another database, for instance, SQL Server, or you want to use MariaDB or MySQL or another database, first you need to find ODBC driver and install this driver for the database. This is the first step you have to do. The second step is you need to create data source, an ODBC data source in your operation system. And this I try now. You can find this, now it's German, it's my operation system here. You go to Windows, and there are Windows tools here. And in the Windows tools, you can find 2 different ODBC data sources. One is 32-bit and another one is 64-bit. And we need to create a 64-bit ODBC data source. So this is quite easy. You need to select a database driver here. So before you can use the database, you need to install the driver for the database. And if you have, for instance, the SQL server, then you can find here in the driver list also the database driver for SQL server. I have here MS Access database, and I create a new one. I need to select the right driver. It's this one. And then I need to set a database name, a name for the data source. And I need to select the database. And this is the next one. You need to find a folder where you can place the database. So Plant Simulation can access this database, and many folders in Windows 11 are protected, and we cannot use it for placing the database there. So I have now my project folder with the virtual user code, and this is the database, and the database needs to have the file extension XDB, and this is MDB is a 32-bit database, and this is a 64-bit database in Access. Okay. So now you should find the data source production here as a data source. And this is the first step you need to do. Otherwise, you cannot connect this database. And you need to remember the data source name. Okay. So these two steps you have to do before you can start with Plant Simulation. Yeah. So first I need a very small example. I want to load data from the database into Plant Simulation, and I want to write data back at the end of the experiment into the database. And so I need a small example. I want to have, of course, source and two machines. The first is machine 1. I switch on the captions. I need a buffer. And I want to have a machine 2. And one train. Okay. To connect Plant Simulation with Access, I need the ODBC interface, and the ODBC interface is part of the interface package. It's here. I need to add this to my class library. And it's also part of the Plan Simulation X packages. And if you don't have the Plan Simulation X license or the interface package, you cannot use the ODBC data interface. Okay, now it's in information flow, and here's the ODBC interface. In the ODBC interface, you need to select the database, and I have some choice here. I take production database. This is the database or the data source name you set in the ODBC configuration in your Windows menu. You can also set name and password. If you have other databases, then you usually have username and password. You need to select here, type it here, so you can connect, and you can press login to check the connection. And this is okay. And if you have okay here, then the database connection could be established. And with logout, you log out the you close the database connection. Okay, so you can check if it's running. So I can connect my database, and now I can create two methods for read the data. The first method I name get data. You can also use the init method, but you don't need to read the data with the init method. If you make, for instance, experiments, then you don't need to read the data every time you start a new experiment. If you load the data only if you change something in the database, then it's enough to have, for instance, a method and a button to start a method. And I need a table file to read the data in. And now we can start with programming. This is quite easy. I need some variables, SQL, string. I need a variable for this object for the elements. First step is to establish a connection to the database. And the command is login. And you need login has 3 parameters. The first parameter is the database. And production database is the name of the database. And then you have your user and password as additional parameters. And the communication with the database is done with SQL. So you need to create SQL commands. For instance, if I want to read all data from elements, then the SQL command is select star asterisk from elements. with SQL, we send this SQL request to the database. SQL has two parameters. The first parameter is a data table. This is data, and the second one is an SQL command. And at the end, very important, ODBC logout. You can only have a certain number of active connections to the database. If you don't log out, or if something crashes, then the database connection keeps open, and starting from a certain point, you get error messages, and then you need to clean all this stuff. And so you need to log out. If you want to avoid these problems, you need to log out from the database. Okay, this I can try now. I run. Okay, I get an error message here. And access to the computer is prohibited. And so I need to allow the access, the connection, or the access to my computer. And this I do in the model settings, and by default it's not allowed to access something on the computer, and so I need to clear this field to run this method. Now I don't get an error message, and I can find all the data from access here in this table, and it's also set the right data types here in the table. It's all defined as number in the database, and this is as string. And so I have all the data, and now I need to run a loop to set this data in my objects. Element in my data table has the data type string, and so I need to change the data type from string to object. And I can use a conversion table conversion method as the to object. I can find the data in data second column. In this row, I set the prop time. I set the availability. It's the fourth column. And the MTDR. And I set the capacity. and this is 5. And in the last column, I find the capacity. Okay, if I start this now, I get an error message because by default, the objects in plant simulation don't have a failure profile. And so machine 1, okay. This is misspelling. I named the machines with underline in the database. It's not with underline. And so I need to rename my machines first. I run it again, and now I come here. This is an interesting explication here for the failure unknown identifiers, failure. So, but as I said, by default, station and the buffer don't have a failure profile. It's completely empty, and so I need to create first a failure profile for all of these elements. Okay. And the default failure profile name, if you create one failure, is failure. And now it runs, it sets the processing time and configure the failure availability 75% and 5 hours MTDR. And the second machine has 45 seconds processing time, 50% availability and 10 hours MTDR. Okay, now I can run experiments. The buffer capacity is set to 100. It's also in the database. This is what you need to check if it's makes sense to have this data in the database, if this is part of the experimentation. I need to set end time, maybe 100 days. And then I can use an end sim method that is called automatically at the end of the experiment to write data back to the database. And so I rename this method to end sim. And this I want to use to write some data back to the database. For instance, the buffer capacity, so I can identify the experiment or experiment number. Then I want to have the average lifespan of one part and the average exit interval of the train and the number of parts at the end of 100 days. And it's quite the same. I need a SQL statement. And then I need to pack all the data in the right SQL statement. And the statement I need here is insert. Yes, and SQL is one string, and I need to create one big string that is sent to the database. The data table is simulation runs. And I don't want to set all values of this table because the first data field is automatic increment value, and so I need to define all columns I want to set, and this is buffer capacity. Throughput. Exit interval. Output. These are all the column names. Then follows values. It's again SQL command, and then in brackets all the values I want. I want to send. We need to switch all this the data to strings, and first is buffer capacity. This is the first value. Buffer capacity is defined as an integer in the database, and so I don't need to I don't need to mask this value. If you have strings, then you need to mask the string value. Otherwise, it's interpret this string as a field name in Access. Next, I need one comma in this command. And the next value is a string, and so I need to start with this one. And I need to convert this value to a string, and this is stat avg live span. And I need next comma for the next value. Next is quite similar here. So I copy this line. Next, I want to have avg exit interval. And the next one is again defined as integer value in database. So I don't need to mask it. It's not my day. Start them out. And what's missing at the end is this. So you need to create a big SQL, and you can just print this SQL to see if it looks nice at the end. So I start the simulation, let it run until the end. And then I can see here my my nice looking SQL command. Insert into simulation runs, buffer capacity, throughput, exit interval, output values 100. Okay. Then all the time stuff from plant simulation. The best way is to save this stuff as strings, because Access uses a complete different format for times, and you can also change the times to integer values or to numbers and save the numbers. Or for my I create timestamps from this, timestamps based on the plan simulation time here, and save this as a number, and then you can change it back in plan simulation. And so I saved this as strings, and then I have at the end again a number. So it looks nice, and so I can try to send this SQL command to the database. So you should have a look first on this. Otherwise, you have a lot of error messages from the database. And the commands is quite similar, like reading something from the ODBC data interface. You need first to log in. Production database, my database. I don't have login data. With ODBC SQL, you send the SQL command to the database, and we need to close the connection with logout. Okay. So now I can run the simulation until the end. QDBC. No, it should be ODBC. Throughput is, now I have an error message from the ODBC driver. I have unknown field name, throughput. There's H missing here. So now I have one open database connection, and so you have some tries, but if you so now it runs, and now I can log into the database. Okay. This one, simulation runs. Here are my data. Output is 76 and something. Yep. 76098. So It's all working. This is ODBC. This is the way. So steps are you download and install an ODBC 64-bit driver for the database you want to use. Then you set up a data source in your operation system. And then you select data source name here in the ODBC interface. And then you can send SQL statements to the database and get results or write data into the database. Yes, that's it. One remark. ODBC and the communication between database and plant simulation runs really slow. So it's a really bad idea to do database connections and write and read operations during some simulation run. If you try to run the simulation with 10,000 times acceleration, this will slow down your simulation really in a, it's incredible slowly. If you want to have database support during the simulation runs, then you can use the SQLite interface in plant simulation. And this SQLite database you can run as an in-memory database. So all the read and write operations are done only in your computer RAM. And this is much faster than having access to your hard disk or what else you have. So this is really a bad idea to use this ODBC interface during the simulation run. So you can read data from before you start the simulation, and you can write data after the simulation is finished, but not in between. Okay, any questions? Okay, if you don't have the interface package, you can use, for instance, the Python interface to connect with databases. This you can use also with a standard license. And it's a more direct way to connect to databases, but it's the same. Python itself is really slow, and so you cannot use this during the simulation runs. But before and after, it's quite the same like the ODBC interface. And you don't need to establish a data source in your operation system. You can use direct connection to databases like bridges, and Python offers really connections to a big number of databases, different databases.
As always, I have announcements, so I'll jump in with them. You still have a few minutes to think about questions if you do have some. One thing that we always like to remind everybody is that we do have Siemens Accelerator Academy for some more comprehensive education in plant sim. There's also a plant simulation associate certificate. So there's some opportunities if you're just getting started in the space. You can click on any of the links here that will take you to that area of the Siemens webpages on our site for more information on that. This one you've been hearing about for a while if you've been with us for a while. So Realize Live is our annual customer event that's held in different locations around the globe. We had one in the US for Americas. We were just in Amsterdam for Europe. And then there are two occurring in Asia this summer, APAC in Bangalore, India, and then there will be a Mandarin language Realize Live in China down in Shenzhen. So you can click on either of those registration links if you're interested. You can also look that up on the Siemens website. And then also, if you are in Europe, you didn't make it out to Amsterdam, there is a Plant Simulation Realize Live Club that's happening in October in Munich. And so that's another opportunity to connect in person. I think they're still accepting presentations. So if you have a submission that you'd like to make, I will find out from them what the deadline is, but you can use the smaller QR code for a presentation. And then if you'd just like to register, you can use that larger QR code there. And we are now at the point in this when we normally have the pop-up survey, but a few things today haven't been going as expected. So we'll skip that for today, but you can definitely throw any comments in the chat. And then I'll stop here with Steffen's contact information. You can click through to see his community profile. And then if you didn't save it already, goodness, because I jumped ahead one slide. Let me show you this in case anyone is new. This is the link to the forums here for our Plant Simulation virtual user group. This is where you can find us in the forum specifically and only for plant simulation. And so the illustration there is recommending that you click follow to follow this topic, which will subscribe you so that you see these posts when you come in on your homepage. And then we also recommend that you subscribe to email notifications for this area by clicking the email icon and then clicking every post, because the only thing there will be plant simulation topics, the recordings, the invites to these live sessions, and related questions. So our next meetings, if you're interested in either of these topics, you can click there and register. Our optimized simulation models with the GA Wizard on August 5th, and Steffen will go through modeling index tables using transporters and tracks on August 19th. So you can click there to register for either of those topics as well. Let's go to the contact slide. I see several questions have come in, which is great. So Steffen, I will hand this back to you to get those questions answered. Feel free to steal the screen if you need to.
Yes. What is a major difference between SQLite and ODBC? SQLite is a database like Access or SQL Server or MySQL. It's a lightweight database. It's made for speed. You have it on many variables and many small. If you have a step counter, then maybe there is SQLite on the step counter. And so it's a database. ODBC, it's a protocol for data exchange. So it's you cannot compare it. ODBC it's only a protocol. And SQLite, it's part of the plant simulation distribution. You can find the SQLite database interface directly in your information flow folder. And so you don't need to install this database. It's already coming with plant simulation. Will there be what's new in version 26.06 session? Yes, in I guess in 2nd of September.
September, yes.
Yes. Which is the best way of loading data, 1 million rows or 1,000 rows, to model before the run as well as during the run. During the run, it's a very bad idea, or you want to wait for some minutes for the data. If you load the data in plant simulation, it needs to locate the data all in your store, in your computer memory, and this takes time. It takes for each data point, it needs only some milliseconds, but if you have millions of data, then it may take some seconds or minutes, even minutes, to establish all the data. And yeah, it takes time. And so the best way is to load before you start to experiment, and then let it in the yeah, in the memory of your computer until you don't need it anymore, if you have enough memory. And this is the next one. If you need to handle with a big amount of data, then you can see all the you can track the memory you need, and you need to have enough memory to place all the data in the memory of your computer. And this is also very important for the speed of computerization. And so, yes, the best way is load it before you start to experiment, and keep the data in your memory. And so the best way is to use an in-memory database. It don't need to be SQLite. You can also use MariaDB, for instance, or another in-memory database to hold the data in the memory. What is better not to have latency issue with data transfer from MES ERP system to PlanSim. Okay, at least here in Europe, nobody gives you access directly to the MES or ERP system. And so you need to deal with some export formats from the database, and then load the data from this export format into plan simulation. This may be XML or Excel or some text files, but it's really a really bad idea to access directly productive systems from plan simulation. And yes, and here in Europe, nobody gives you access to this. And so there's no problem with latency issues or something. It's yeah, you create a lot of rubbish and unnecessary data for the MES and ERP systems. And so it doesn't make sense to write data back. And it's too risky to read directly from MES ERP systems from plan simulation.
Stefan, but what if we use Excel or XML, will it create some issues again in that time synchronization for data? Because while I want to use that data while simulation model is running.
The problem is you need to synchronize plan simulation with the resource data system, and this means you can run the simulation with one acceleration with real time, and this is mostly not intended in the simulation, and so you need to find some ways to create. It's a big problem and a big issue to recognize changed data from plan simulation, because you need another like information system into into plan simulation. You can use Socket, for instance, or ODBC or something like this to create a connection to the real data. But a database connection, you don't recognize if data changed. You need another mechanism for this. And ODBC, for instance, works very well in this case. You only need a data concentrator, for instance, and then ODBC plays the data into plan simulation, and you can connect it automatically with methods in plan simulation. And so you need some other interfaces to establish this connection. But ODBC, it's not the right way. ODBC is only, you can read and write data, but you cannot see the changes in the database. You need some It's like a doorbell. You need a doorbell when you need to read the data again. And from MES, you often have the connections to OPC. It's another interface here in plant simulation. So this is here OPC UA and OPC Classic. You can use this, for instance, or socket info.
Hello, Steffen. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Yes. So the process you just described with remediating the out-of-date data. So would the approach be to use the OPC connection as the doorbell to notify you when to read the data back in?
Yes, because OPC has a direct interface into the simulation, and you can start using the OPC interface directly methods in plant simulation. And so it works very well as a doorbell, and OPC you can connect with a lot of applications. But again, you need to think about if it makes sense, because you cannot run the simulation then with acceleration. You need to keep in real time. This is not simulation anymore. It's only shadowing the real process.
Thank you for clarifying.
I see that there's a question in the chat about any info on further development of the AI agent in Plant Sim. I'll take a stab at this because Steffen and I were talking about it earlier. I've invited members of our product team to present on that in the fall. So there's not a lot of information, but they will do a full presentation. We're trying to figure out which date, probably October. So soon, but not right now.
And can we use OPC to get signals in real time and ODBC to get data both at the same time? Okay, it's step by step, and ODBC takes time. So in real time, no, it takes some time to communicate with the database. But OPC, it's quite fast, but ODBC is really slow. If you're coming with production interfaces, and if you have real database connectivities, and you have signal run times in the area of seconds, and so it's not really fast. Okay.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, we'll see everybody in the forums.
Yeah, thank you. Until next time.
Thanks. Bye, all.